In the shadow of the most powerful city in the world, the Capital Golf Gang is on the air with instructor John Ronis from the Ronis Academy at River Creek, Executive Director of the Middle Atlantic PGA John Gould, and former University of Maryland golfer Ron Thomas. And now your host from Afternoon Drive on the Team 980 Radio in Washington, D.C., Steve Zabin.
The last of the glorious summer days are upon us, kids, as it is hot, hot, hot in late August, and the tour has come to town, to Maryland. It's close enough. Everyone's going to the BMW Championship, and Caves Valley is putting on a show right now. Welcome aboard, Capital Golf Gang, presented by Golfdom, plausibly live from the fitting bay, the main fitting bay here at Golfdom Golf in Tyson's Corner. The usual cast of suspects almost all here. Ron Thomas is here. Buddy Christensen, owner of Golfdom, is here. He has become quite the regular fill-in. Thank you, Buddy.
Sure.
Appreciate that. And we welcome Michael Muehr to the program, former Duke Blue Devil and a guy who made 74 PGA Tour starts. Is that right, Michael?
Apparently.
We
went deep into the archives for that.
Very nice. Ronnie, you know
I
Michael
do.
Muehr. How about a little golf clap?
Yep, Mike is a
It's good to have
Mike's a longtime friend, and we're happy to have him on the show.
And second appearance on the show. You remember, Mike, when the show was at the studios in Rockville.
That's right.
You came on then. And you're wondering why so long between invites, right?
Yeah, I mean, lots happened since then.
We haven't had the budget. We've been saving a little bit every week. We finally have enough money for you.
You got to save a lot for the America's guest, right?
I think you finally hit, what, a couple thousand listeners?
Yeah, exactly. That was the threshold.
Yeah.
Muehr said, look, if you don't have 1,000 listeners, I'm not coming on. I'm not wasting my time. All right, so we got a lot to talk about today, including the tour coming to town and everything else. Ron, were you at Caves Valley on Thursday?
I was, yep.
Can you give me a quick report?
Yeah.
Hot.
It was hot, but besides that, I mean, those guys are used to that. It's, how do I say this? It's a good golf course. It's a neat golf course. It's soft. It's always been soft. They've dealt with that for a long time. They've tried to put new greens in, new sod. They're going to eat it up. I think only, 6 guys were over par yesterday. It's incredibly hilly, but the infrastructure was the most impressive part for me. The build-out of the infrastructure, and actually what was most impressive for me was every single group. You'd be like, all right, who's on the tee? And you'd wait, and then they'd come up, and you'd be like, oh, Matsuyama. Oh, the next group. It would be like, Mickelson.
It's all meat, as I like to say.
And my favorite group, the one I followed probably the longest, was Sergio, Lee Westwood, and Van Rooyen, I think his name is.
Eric Van Rooyen, who was top the leaderboard guy who smashed a tee marker at the PGA.
Right, and there was only about 10 people following that group, so I was up close and personal, and literally every group was marquee. And
well, that's the beauty of it. I mean, this is a rare event that they would get the second leg of the FedEx Cup playoffs. Buddy, do you know why this wrinkle has happened?
As far as being played at Caves?
Yes.
I heard that there is an executive with BMW that's a member at Caves. There's some connection there with BMW coming to Caves because it's going back to Chicago.
Yeah, Olympia Fields.
And then I heard it may be coming back here again. It's just what I've heard out there. I'm not positive on any of that.
Okay. Michael, I'm sure you've played Caves.
I have played Caves.
And what are your thoughts of it?
I think it's great. It's as Ron said, they've gradually improved the golf course over the last 15 or 20 years since I first played it. But as far as the facilities go, it might be the nicest in the country between the locker rooms and the clubhouse and the food and the ambiance.
The cottages.
That Dennis Sadisher has run it since day one. He's a former Duke golfer and Duke quarterback. Ironically,
really?
Yeah. And he's been the head pro, director of golf, general manager, whatever the role is. But it's his show, and he puts a good one on up there. It's just a spectacular visit if you have the opportunity to go there.
You wouldn't know where it is unless you had directions and a good GPS. It's kind of in the middle of the woods there.
The best way to get there if you're going off the Beltway up north is 695 Beltways. You go Park Heights Ave straight out, and it takes you right there.
Yeah.
The parking is across the street in a big field, right?
Yeah, it was easy.
So you didn't have to shuttle bus in?
If you have a good parking pass, you don't shuttle in.
But there is a shuttle lot to bring in.
Yes.
Okay. So it's a tour event that comes to town, which we haven't had a regular tour event now for a while. We've been off and on hit or miss ever since, I think, the last one at Avenel around 2018, I want to say. Does that sound about right?
17, 18 sounds right.
So here's the key question. Why don't we have our own bona fide, it's here every year, PGA Tour stop, the nation's capital?
I can tell you.
I was going to say, for time's sake, I'm going to defer to Michael.
Can I speak out of turn? Because
there is no turns on this show.
Because when you want to be in D.C., it's in the fall. And the tour schedule, they've over the last 10 years or whatever long it was ago, they moved all those events to the summer and the spring because it just can't compete with football.
Right.
And you want to be in D.C. in September and October when the golf courses are great. As Ron said, they're just soft. It's hot. And it's hard to conduct an event that gets the top players to come to D.C. in June, July, and August. They did it for Tiger's event in June.
But it was a heavy push to get those
It was a
guys.
heavy push, and I think Tiger really leaned on guys to come play in the event. Otherwise, they would not have been here in late June or early July. It's just a tough time to.
Well, what about late May, where in the first week of June where the Kemper used to sit?
Well, we're going to have next year the Wells Fargo here.
Yes.
Which that is in May, I believe.
Yes,
right?
next year we're going to have that. That's going to be great, but then it's gone.
Right.
So I guess getting those prime late May, early June before it gets too nasty dates are really in high demand, right, for a lot of markets?
High demand, and frankly, there's only 3 or 4 venues in D.C. that can host an event with those, that level of play.
Avenel, Congo, RTJ, Caves. Is that it?
Caves and Trump.
And Trump.
Yep.
Trump could do it, huh?
Oh, yeah.
It held the senior PGA.
Oh, yeah.
But limited fans. I mean, that's, of course, tucked away in and amongst condos and houses and everything else off of Route 7.
Yeah, but it's the biggest golf course of all 5 in terms of length and size, and they do have a second golf course, so structurally they could pull it off. It's just a matter of getting people in and out of there. There's a 2-lane road kind of in and out, so that's probably the biggest challenge. But as far as a venue, it could absolutely host something big. I always said a Ryder Cup would be perfect because it's in October. You'd have 20,000 fans out there, and it's right on the river. It would be spectacular.
And full transparency, Michael is a member there. And when Michael played on tour from about, 99 to 2003 or so, that was his host course, as all tour plays, or his home course, I should say. But Mike, Trump National, talk about a course that's gone through some wonderful improvements. I know I'm not necessarily changing the subject, but I mean that place has changed tremendously.
Yeah, Alex Boyle, who ran the club for Chevy Chase Bank, he had played golf at Yale and was just a great guy, and he really brought it, out of the ground when they took ownership of it from the original developer that went bankrupt. But he developed it, built the second golf course, and when he came out to see it after Trump had, taken down all the trees and exposed the Potomac River, he just couldn't believe what he was able to do. And I call it the magic dust. Trump comes down and sprinkles his magic dust, and all of a sudden there's 3,000 trees gone, and the place has been painted. And he can't argue with his golf business. He's done it really, really well.
Now I believe he trampled on some environmental procedures in taking those trees down.
I don't think so. There was some there was some beetle that was going to take all those trees down anyway.
Well, there is an emerald ash borer which has been killing ash trees all over the place.
Well. So the story I heard was he told the superintendent and some guys, he said, hey, get two chainsaws, name them Thunder and Lightning, and if anybody asks what happened, tell them Thunder and Lightning took them all out.
And, of course, built a waterfall, which is a spectacular feature that is the backdrop for many a wedding and event out there. And I heard, Michael, that apparently they put it in backwards.
They did.
I told you.
He told them to put it concave around the green. Well, the practice green sat about 100 feet above it. And the guys that came down and did it, they came down from New York. They were stone guys, and they wrapped it around the putting green up top instead of around the back of the 18th green.
Oh, no.
So it was completely backwards. And he struggled with whether he should take it out or leave it in. And
this, by the way, for anyone who's not been or seen it, is a 70-foot stone waterfall feature.
Yeah.
Looking at least 50 feet tall.
Yeah, it's massive.
You'd die if you fell off it. But and it overlooks the 18th green, and it's convex, not concave. It doesn't wrap around and hug the 18th green. It's the other way around. However, I've been told that after he thought about it, he's like, you know what? It's perfect. It's fantastic.
Well, it's wedding venue. I mean,
Yes.
it's great for the wedding pictures.
He
and
actually
stuff.
wrote a letter and said, "I'd like you to refer to it as a water feature because it fits like a glove." and so we all accepted it and moved on.
Okay,
But
well, very
perfect.
good.
yeah,
Anyway, we'll talk more about the time you as a member actually got to meet Trump and play with him well before he became president. That was a memorable exchange. We'll talk about that in a bit. Who did you follow? You said you followed basically Sergio, Westwood, and Van Rooyen with 10 other people out there?
I went to the first tee, and I watched DeChambeau hit driver on number 1 into the bunker, 337.
Is one – I get confused. Is one in the woods? Because they have us go off 10 a lot when I go up there.
One's just the straightaway, just a little
Downhill near the cottages?
Yes, that's-
Okay, yeah.
No, that's 10 downhill near the cottages. 1 heads out, Michael. You can attest to this. It's got the bunkering on the right, short hole. 10 is more downhill, if I'm correct. But anyway, so number 1.
10 is an iron off the tee, even for
Yes.
amateurs. Right, buddy?
I've never played.
You haven't?
I haven't played.
Well,
I've
now.
had 2 invites that both got rained out, and then we didn't reschedule.
Number 1 is an iron off the tee. They all went off number 1 yesterday. It's an iron off the tee. Anyway, Bryson hits driver. He was playing with Jordan Spieth, and the third player was Harris English. So we watched them hit. Then right behind them was a great group, Morikawa, Justin Thomas. It was just one, and then after that was Westwood, Sergio. So right there I had what I needed. And I've only watched Phil hit balls once or twice in person, or shots, and I wanted to follow Phil. Phil was struggling with the heat yesterday. You could see that on Thursday. You could see that.
So you went hole by hole and walked and watched?
1, 2, 3, 4, and then headed back up to.
Okay.
I was in the BMW owners pavilion.
Very nice. I remember the days at Avenel at the Kemper Open, finding a guy or two on a Thursday or Friday that I just wanted to see. He may not have been a big star, but you knew you could get up close and just watch him. And I just soaked up every little thing that they did.
Well,
you know?
I'm going to involve Michael in this conversation. Mike, you know this as a former tour player who had 2 top 10 finishes. I believe in 2001, you've nearly won the Nissan at LA Country Club, or is it Riviera?
Was it Riviera?
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Riviera. You were leading going into, I think, maybe the 14th hole. Is that right? On Sunday.
Through 10 or 11, I was leading.
Okay, and then you did well, I think, up in Canada one year. So you had 2 top 10s. You earned a little bit over $500,000 in your career, and it was cut short, of course, by melanoma, a melanoma diagnosis, which ended your promising career. But Mike, as a former tour player, do you have any idea now just how much you guys are admired and revered when you're out on that golf course, like I was revering these guys yesterday?
I had a little different perspective. I was typically really early off the tee on Thursday morning, but on weekends, if I was playing well in contention, it was always a privilege and a lot of fun just to play in front of the people and try to perform for them. So it's really fun, and you feed off the energy. A couple times I played. Once with Tiger and a couple times right behind him and right ahead of him.
When did you compete with Tiger?
That was in 2001 and 2002. So I played a full season in 01. Finished,
At what event were you paired with him?
I think it was Las Colinas and the Byron Nelson. But playing in front of him was far more difficult than playing with him. Because the people, he captured 80% of the people that were on property were following him. And so as soon as they knew that he was ready to tap out, they were on the move to try to get a spot, and they're running ahead. And so the group ahead was getting stampeded by 20,000 people trying to get a spot where they can, get a glimpse of him on the next hole. So that was the worst spot on the golf course, one group ahead of Tiger.
Was playing with him fascinating in its
Great.
own way?
He was great. I mean, he was really personable, and, he treated me just like he would have treated anybody else. So it was great, and
01 is the peak of his powers. Of his superpowers.
It absolutely was. I mean, he was just so dominant. He probably won 9 times that year, something like that, 7 or 9 times.
Did you watch him hit shots and say to yourself, my God, I am not in that stratosphere?
Yes. There were a bunch of guys like that, though. I mean, he was one of them.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Who else awed you?
So when you walk, I always tell people, when you go to a tour event like Ron did the other day at the BMW, the best spot to hang out is on the driving range. You don't even have to leave the range. You just watch these guys go up and down the range, and their tempo and the way they strike the ball and their consistency, and you just watch the routine as they warm up or as they practice. And they're all like robots. You know, they all play a little draw, or some guys play a little fade. But then you come across probably 8 or 10 guys that are just different. And it's different the way the ball, the sound of the ball coming off and the way it comes off is just different. And in my period, Lucas Glover was just coming on the scene. He was one. He was just an animal. He has hands like a gorilla, and he just absolutely murders the ball. But he was there was a kid, Chris Smith, who played at Ohio State. Ron Thomas definitely knows him.
My dear friend
from Indiana, and
compressed it.
He could really hit a golf ball. He couldn't really putt it. He won the tour. He won the tour event at Westchester, the Buick Classic. He won 3 times on the Corn Ferry back then, whatever it's called, to get that Battlefield promotion.
Yeah, Battlefield promotion.
But there were just guys out there that when you were playing with them, it was kind of it was tough, because you just felt like it was going to be really hard to beat that guy over 4 days.
So the guys that Mike was close to, I know this. He was very close with he still is with J.J. Henry. Very close with Lucas Glover. Very close with Joe Ogilvy. Mm-hmm. Is that accurate?
Yeah, he was a college teammate of mine for 2 years. Yeah.
These are guys that not only played for a long time on tour, and Brett Quigley. Brett Quigley is now on the senior tour, and I think he won an event. But these were the guys that actually went on and ran, or they became the advisors, the tour advisor board guys.
Player advisory group. Yeah.
Player advisory group. So Mike was in with these guys who were just solid players, but solid human beings. Yeah. And I was lucky. I got to be at a couple of events with Mike, a couple of Halloween parties with these guys. Yeah. But they're just as down to earth as can be. And being out there yesterday, watching the admiration, the adoration that these spectators had for these players, it's remarkable. And it made me go home and practice. I got home at 7, and I went straight to the range.
Went to go grind.
To remind myself how shitty my swing is.
He needed it.
Thanks for that edit. Now I gotta go in there and take that out. Ronnie the Potty Mouth. All right, coming up, we'll talk about the time Michael met a guy who would end up being president, and he said to him, BS, nobody's a +5, and then he showed him a little something. Also, about some tips about melanoma. We're all out in the sun. Ronnie, you are red as can be. You've got a full summer of sun on you. So we'll talk about that, plus more from the BMW Championship as we continue on special edition of the Capital Golf Gang presented by Golfdom here in Tyson's Corner.
You are listening to the Capital Golf Gang. 4 guys who have to come up with creative excuses to their wives for those grass stains on their pants. You are listening to the Capital Golf Gang. 4 guys who once dreamed of becoming caddies on the PGA Tour until they found out you have to take the blame for everything.
Speaking of which, we'll ask Michael about his caddy when he was on the PGA Tour. We are back. Zabe here with Ron Thomas, Buddy Christensen, and Michael Muehr, who is now America's guest, the king of the cocktail circuit, as he has been dubbed on another podcast, which we can talk about. Michael played at Duke University, and Ron knew him, not through competing per se, but you playing at Maryland. Kind of got to know him through Tommy Mensing, your buddy who played at Maryland after you.
No, he was my teammate.
Teammate, actually, sorry.
And he was Mike's caddy.
Oh, he was? Okay, on tour.
Mm-hmm. He was.
All right, let's talk about that since the rejoin says.
I don't know. I signed an NDA way back 20 years ago. I cannot reveal what was going on back then.
Was it mostly good times between you two? Was there any tense moments?
No, it was all great.
Okay.
Tommy was the best. He's one of the funniest guys I know, and Ron would attest to that, which was a perfect caddy. He was obviously a great player, hadn't played in college, but just a great, guy to spend 10 hours a day with, which is what it's like when you're out there from sun up to sundown. So,
yeah, beautiful. Yeah. So anyway, once upon a time, about 10 years before Donald Trump would run for president, he bought Lowe's Island Golf Club Trump being a very avid golfer and a guy who has bought properties worldwide and has really shined them up and operated them at a different level. He buys Lowe's Island, which is what at the time was a very nice club, I thought, in Sterling, Virginia, not far from where I used to live. But he came in with a vision, and he came in with the usual Trump bravado. And I hear legendary stories, Michael, about the first member meeting when he took over. And it was like, here's what we're going to do. If you don't like it, there's the door. We're going to increase dues to this. If you don't like it, there's the door. You can't have your own golf carts, but you can rent them from me. If you don't like it, here's the door. On down the list, right?
That's spot on.
And then one day he was there for a site visit and a round, and he's like asking, okay, who's a good player around here? And he gets to you, and you say, I'm a +5.
Well, it didn't actually. It was actually at that meeting where he's telling everybody to hit the door, hit the bricks, that we're going to be better than congressional. And somebody says, "What if we don't want to be?" He says, "Well, you can hit the bricks." And at which point he says, "And by the way, who's the best golfer in here?" And there was co-ed, and somebody points to me sitting, down the way. And this is during the Apprentice, the height of the Apprentice. So when he buys your club and comes to tell you what he's going to do with the joint, everybody shows up. There's 500 people in the room, and so.
How did you feel about being pointed out?
Well, whatever. I'm slumping in my chair, and he says, "Well, I'm going to come down. I'm going to kick your ass." I said, "Okay." And 2 months later, the pro calls and says, "Mr. Trump's coming down. He'd like to play with you. I've got 2 other guys, Pete and Roe, and I think Buddy knows Pete. He's the old Titleist rep, Pete Robeson."
Yeah.
And so we're on the first tee, and he says, "Well, we should have a game. What's everybody's handicap?" And Pete says, "I'm a 2." And Roe Donda says, "I'm an 11." I said, "Well, I'm a +5." He says, looks at me, +5.
Bullshine.
Bullshine. Nobody's a +5. I'll take the 2 over there. I don't even think he remembered the guy's name, Pete. And I proceeded, again, I've been a member there forever, and I was, wasn't freshly off the tour, but 5 or 6 years, and I birdied the first, birdied 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, at which point, I could just say I birdied the first 6, but it's better when you say I birdied 1, 2, 3.
So let me recall. I birdied 1, 2, 3, 4, birdied 5. Oh, and I birdied 6 as well.
At which point, he looks at me in the cart and says, "I don't know who the hell you are, but you're my partner now." Pete's out. And we had a good time going forward after that.
Did Trump really swap out partners?
Right there. And I think he actually brought us to the back tees because we were playing the member tees, and he said, "Let's go to the tips. We got these guys."
And Mike, that wasn't we're not going to go into a lot of Donald Trump and talking, but then in the last time you played with Donald Trump, and I know you've had a lot of rounds with him, and I know there are many stories that we don't need to go into, but I'm sure it was always entertaining playing with Donald Trump.
It always has been. He's like a giant cartoon character. He loves golf. I mean, he loves sports in general. He's played golf with so many athletes from so many different sports. He loves the game, and he's really fun to be out there with. He appreciates the game, and he wants to be a great player. He's probably not as good as he always wanted to be or thought he was, but he's a very, very fine player. He's 75 years old.
Yeah.
And he's always very kind to me and gracious with me, and I was fortunate to play a lot of rounds of golf with him.
Yeah. Did you say that he said most people don't sneak up on me, but you did?
Yeah.
Because you got a phone call from Lucas Glover on that first round. And
so it was the first Saturday after Lucas had won the Open on that. They had a Monday finish, and so this is 5 days later, and Lucas is finally calling me back after 5 days after I called to congratulate him, and I didn't even answer the phone. I just handed it over to Donald, who's sitting next to me. He says, He says, "Hello." And it was Lucas. He says, "Who's this?" And says, "It's Lucas Glover." "Well, this is Donald Trump." And he's trying to big time Lucas, who's coming off the Open, and telling him, and so he handed the phone back. He says, that's when he said, not many guys sneak up on me, but you did.
Yeah, so you snuck up on him there. All right. Your melanoma occurred what year? When was your diagnosis?
I was about 2/3 of the way through the season of 2002.
Okay. Where did it emerge, and what part of your body?
It was on my right ankle. I had been home the prior week. And,
ankle?
Yeah, weird spot. And the dermatologist took a spot off and said she wasn't too concerned, and then called me a week later. I remember it's one of those things you know exactly where you were when it happened, 9/11, whatever. And I was on the golf course at Scott McCarron's Pro-Am in Sacramento, and I got the call, and she said, "You got to come home immediately." And it turned out to be a lot worse than I thought it was. I was just ignorant to the disease. And
Stage 4.
Yeah, stage 4. It was in my lymph nodes moving around, and my oncologist gave me a 35% chance of making it past 5 years. Wow. I said,
That's
wow.
it.
And then he said, what do you do for a living? I said, I play golf. He says, so you're outside 7 days a week? I said, well, I usually miss the cut, so I'm only out there about 5. But he said, well, then let's make it 25%. And so that was a decision maker right there for me. It was a game changer, and I just...
So even with all the sunscreen, with all of the extra layers, it was not advisable with melanoma to be out at all.
Well, I could have rolled the dice. Frankly, Steve, I was a fringe player. I was really good in college, really good as an amateur. Probably peaked when I was 18. I was like the number 2 kid in America behind Justin Leonard. But I would always have been on the cusp of keeping my job that year.
Right.
A good year, I might have finished 60th or 70th on the money list. My first year out, I finished 121st, and that was miserable. I was watching, refresh, because I'd missed the cut the last week in Jackson, Mississippi. And I went into the week, I think, 118th, and was thinking, geez, am I going to fall out of the 125? It was a hard 125 back then. And if you finish 126, you're down the road. Yeah, exactly. So I finished in the 125, and it just would have been a struggle. So making that decision to hang it up wasn't really that difficult, to be honest.
So, something that I feel is important to point out, and Michael told me this, so I'll never forget it, and I've tried to carry this on and tell my son. Well, I have told Winston often that Michael was told that it could have been just one bad sunburn that he got when he was a kid at the pool.
Yep.
As a kid,
they probably it's hard to pinpoint something like that, but that's what they said. Probably a bad sunburn, as a kid. And a golfer's tan, you can everybody knows their feet are white, their hands are white, their upper body's white, and that's probably where I got it, where I was exposed and the skin hadn't seen much sun, so
it can happen anywhere on your body.
Between your toes.
Not necessarily where the sun is beating down.
Where the sun doesn't shine. You got to have a proper check. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Believe me.
All right. Well, serious stuff. Well, I'm super glad. Is everything in remission?
It is.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and again, I know Michael so well that I can tell you this, or I need to tell you this. Mike didn't just sit by and let his career end. He didn't have a choice. He left the tour. But Mike came up with a charity called Pros Beating Cancer, and he had a tournament for many years out at Lowe's Island, Trump National, and it was called the Capital City Classic.
Yep, Capital City Charity Pro-Am.
Yeah, and he and his wife and his parents put this tournament on, and he had a lot of help from the crew out at Trump, but he raised over $1 million, I think about $1.3 million, and it was always the Monday after the local tournament we had here. So he had
a lot of big names.
Yeah.
Well, solid people.
Yeah.
Maybe not the biggest names.
But good dudes.
Like guys
dudes
like
who would give the AMs a great time if they came out and donated, right?
J.J. Henry, Jason Gore, these solid Chappell, right?
Jim McGovern, and just the guys that really knew the walk, right? When you're paying $5 or $10,000 or whatever it was to play in one of these things, and you pick the highest profile guy, you're usually disappointed.
Yeah.
So I'd get these 20 or 23 guys that love to, shoot the breeze and tell stories and stick around for cocktails afterwards, and that's what these guys want to hear as from an amateur standpoint.
And what happened was once they came 1 year, they realized how solid the membership at Trump was, or the guys that were invited to play. They realized how solid these guys were, and you develop these relationships that you carry through for many years, business relationships, staying at their place. And another thing I have to say is Donald Trump was very supportive of this event, and if I recall, wrote a nice check each and every year to this event, somewhere to the tune of $50,000 maybe. Just
nice.
And gave him the golf course. I mean, I'm sure he maybe had to pay for a little bit for it, but. And I was fortunate to be able to auction off a trip to the Indy 500 every year, and these guys, 12, 14, 16,000, and they'd come out, and I got to entertain them. And these guys are now my friends for life that I was able to do this with. So my point is Mike is, he's done something about it, and it was a lot of work. Boy, it was a lot of work.
Sure it is.
Well, and I just would say that, Mike talks about his career was over, but his amateur career that started after that has been one of the most impressive. I'm sure we'll chat about it. But there are a lot of people who would take that career that he had beyond that. So it's very cool that he was able to turn that into another level of
Mike
success.
Mike is a top-ranked mid-amateur, as you would say. A
mid-amateur, for those that don't know, is what? A guy between the age of 30 and 50?
Just over 25. Once you're 25, you become a mid-amateur. And so the U.S. mid-amateur is coming up in 3 or 4 weeks at Sankaty Head and Nantucket. The winner of the mid-amateur gets into the U.S. Open and the Masters. So
Lord
it's the
have
real.
mercy.
Yeah.
Did you qualify for the mid-am?
I did, yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Well, good.
So how many I need some time on this. How many USGA championships?
I'm right around 20 maybe. I had that
incredible.
hiatus of, when I was playing professionally and then 4 years of not playing any golf where I didn't play in any other than those 3 Opens. But
how many U.S. Opens? 3.
3
Shinnecock.
Opens. Yeah, Shinnecock, Pinehurst, and Bethpage, yeah.
Okay, and if I recall, the mid-am was up in New York, or I'm sorry, up in Pennsylvania at Stonehenge. Is that what it's called?
Stonewall.
Stonewall, and you made it to the
I made it to the semis, I think, that
and
year.
there was an event. There was a thing that happened in that semifinal match that involved a caddy who was a father of the player picking up his son's ball.
Man, you've got just a steel trap for a memory, this guy.
Picking up his son's ball, and Michael down the stretch with a chance to go to the finals, to go to the Masters. I get a little emotional when I talk about this because I care so much about him, and this is the kind of human being he is. But instead of calling the penalty and saying, "You lose the hole," he looks at the kid, he looks at the player, he looks at the dad, and he says, "It's good."
Yeah, I mean, it was.
Are you allowed to do that in match play?
Yeah, you can do it.
There would
pretty much
be
anything.
a post concession, which a lot of the people would be like, "I'm sorry, you picked up the ball. I didn't give you that putt."
I thought there was a rule that said you cannot agree to waive the rules in match
It's
play.
when you're out there, Mike. Tell them.
Yeah, it's really you and the other player. There really are no other players.
I mean,
fair enough. So
that's
you
character.
You said, and you ended up losing
I 3-putted the 18th hole to lose. Oh, wow. Yeah, the one down. But
to go to the Masters.
I mean, look, the putt was maybe
go
3
to
feet.
the land of Oz.
His father was holding the pin. It was like a 50-footer. He rolled it about 3 feet past. The problem was I was still chipping. I hadn't hit my chip yet from the deep rough. It was a par 3, the 17th hole. And I said, man, it's good. And thank God I chipped it up there to like 6 inches. Frankly, if I had left it 10 feet short, I think he would have given it to me.
That's cool.
Because,
cool.
I hope he would have.
So his dad picked up the 3-footer assuming it was good, but you had not yet said so.
That's right.
Okay.
And I wouldn't have given it to him. There's no way I would have given it to him. Still in the rough, chipping to try to make par.
Right.
So it was.
It's amazing.
But once he did it, I mean.
So it's a gentleman's game. And you're in the gentleman's circuit now, being at the high level of amateur events, and you play in events that have names attached to them that you have to be really kind of a nerdy golf fanatic to know about, things like the Crump Cup at Pine Valley.
So we kind of refer to it in tongue-in-cheek as the cocktail tour, the cocktail circuit. But we get to play, and, again, great time as a professional. Played for 10 years all over the world. Played in Europe and 4 years on the web.com and then 3 on the tour. But the golf courses that I get to play now as a mid-amateur or an amateur, it's incredible. So we play the Crump Cup at Pine Valley. We play the Coleman Invitational
which
at
Mike
Seminole.
has won 3 times, the Crump Cup. Go ahead.
Yeah, we play the Coleman Invitational at Seminole.
Oh
I actually
God.
did win that one a couple years ago, too. We play the George Thomas at LA Country Club.
Okay.
The singles matches at National.
Okay.
The Travis over at Garden City.
Yeah. See, these, like I said, they're all names attached to it.
Oh, yeah.
Now you know
What was the
now
one?
you know you're in the elite amateur circuit. These tournaments. You're like, I've never heard of that. What is it? And don't worry, you're not good enough to get in.
They just had one at Wingfoot. What's that
That's
one
the
called?
Anderson. That's
The
a 2-man 4-ball event.
Yeah.
So it's certainly a life of privilege to be able to play these golf courses in a tournament format.
And
with a
who
bunch of guys.
organizes them?
These tournaments have been going on. The Crump Cup at Pine Valley has been going on for 100 years. Francis Ouimet won it in 1924 or something.
So it's organized by members of these high-end clubs with good players, and they say, let's invite this guy, and this guy, and compete. It's a way for you guys to compete. It's like pick-up basketball for ex-NBA players.
Yeah.
But in golf.
And let me just tell you, the level of competition at these really elite level mid-amateur events is high.
Oh, yeah.
It's Stuart Hagestad and and Scott Harvey and guys that have
Gene
played
Elliott.
the Masters and made the cut at the Masters.
Mike McCoy, Gene Elliott, Jeff Knox.
Yeah.
name
Bill
it.
Glasson. I'm throwing out random tour names.
No, these are all
would
guys
likely
that-
be, you know,
these are all amateur players.
career
yeah.
amateurs.
career amateurs.
Career
But you're not a
amateurs.
career
No,
amateur.
but there's a lot
You're-
of reinstated professionals. I
You're
was
a guy who made the show,
Yeah.
like Crash Davis.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It is really cool, and
Hey, everybody here who's played Pine Valley, one of the most difficult to get on, exclusive, magical places in all the globe, raise your hand.
Mike.
4 for 4. Wow.
One other thing, Mike has won the club championship, I believe, 4 times at Pine Valley.
Yeah.
And including he made a hole-in-one last year when he won it. Was it last year?
It was 2 years ago, didn't
But 2 years ago.
Roddy, real quick. Tell them when you and I played there and how we got there.
We got there, Brian Ferris. He knows Brian.
Yep.
We played actually with the guy that Brian was invited to play with us was a former Duke.
Member at
guy.
Marion, who extended
your
the
buddy.
invite. We still haven't taken
Jim
advantage
Donnelly,
of it.
maybe?
I
Jim Donnelly?
can't remember, but you knew him. You're like, oh, my God. So we got invited through.
Brian Ferris listened to my show in Atlanta when it was on nationally and reached out to me and said Pine Valley, and I nearly fainted when I opened the email. And then I found out he was really for real, said, yeah, come on up, and he said, bring a friend. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. So Ron got the call because I always want to bring my best player and my best ambassador, and Ron fits the bill on both of those. And let me tell you, it was more magical, Ron, than I could have imagined.
It was spectacular. And, of course, Brian Ferris now is the chairman of the board, co-chairman with Heidi Uberoth out at Pebble Beach because his father was Dick Ferris, who bought Pebble along with Uberoth and Eastwood. So wonderful guy, hilarious, total character, good player, played in the Senior Open a couple years ago. Mike, there's one thing before we go to break I have to ask you about. 2 years ago at the New Jersey State Open, where you have finished runner-up, you grew up in New Jersey, you're a New Jersey kid, COVID, going in the last day, you're one behind, I think, and because you had traveled to Virginia within the last 2 weeks, they made you WD, although you said, I'm not WDing, you can DQ me.
Yeah.
But he's always wanted to win the New Jersey Open.
So they DQ'd you just because you traveled?
Well, I'm from
from here.
here.
You're from here. And
So
we were deemed a
Do you
high
mind-
risk.
Do you mind
state.
talking about this?
We
Yeah,
got to
no.
go to break here,
Yeah.
so do it quick. 30-second shot.
yeah, so
clock.
I finished my second round, 3 rounds of stroke play. Finished the second round. I'm leading the tournament. When I left the golf course, I get a phone call 30 minutes later from the director of the New Jersey State Golf Association. Governor Murphy has just put Virginia on the do not fly,
Oh,
the
my God.
quarantine list. You're out. I said, what do you mean I'm out? You want me to go get tested? He said, you're out. And so I had to withdraw and hit the road.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But you made them DQ you, not
Yeah,
withdraw.
that's right.
Outrageous. All right, coming back, we'll have one last segment. A rare rebuke of Rory from the biggest stan of Rory on the show? Maybe. Stay tuned.
You are listening to the Capital Golf Gang. 4 guys who all carry a perfect club, an alien wedge, a double-sided chipper, and a 20-foot ball retriever. You are listening to the Capital Golf Gang. 4 guys who only care about one trajectory on their irons: airborne.
We're back. Zabe here, Ron Thomas, Buddy Christensen, and Michael Muehr, former Duke University Division I player, former tour player, and now on the cocktail circuit. We've been enjoying his various stories. Ron, how you been? You've been down to Pinehurst playing quite a bit.
I have, yeah. I played in the Virginia State Senior Amateur down in Birdwood, 77-71, missed match play by 2, and then I went down and played in the Pinehurst Club Championship and got my butt handed to me by course number 2 and course number 4. I shot a lot.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You were down there. You were in the fray.
I had a blast.
That's how it works. Buddy, you had a big month here in August at Golfdom. People still coming in.
Yeah, they're coming in. They're getting prepared for the best time of year to play.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking forward to playing a lot of golf myself in September, October, and even November.
And, Michael, what do you do schedule-wise in terms of your playing? Do you go all year round? Do you go where it's warm in the winter?
I pick my spots. I play 4 or 5 tournaments if I'm lucky. The Crump Cup is coming up in late September, so I'll play that. The Mid-Amateur is the following week at Sankaty Head in Nantucket. And then, work around kids' sports. Buddy, I got a bone to pick with you, by the way, while we're on it.
Sure.
There's an old staff bag when you walk in here with my name on it.
Yep.
And it's pretty cool that it's still in here, but it's holding umbrellas. I mean, it's like over in the corner.
Hey, do you know how much margins?
I don't even think you sell those umbrellas. They're just like old umbrellas.
Tell him what
there.
Backstrom said.
Nick Backstrom, Hall of Fame center for the Washington Capitals, who's in here a lot, right, buddy? As many Capitals are.
Not during the season. He's working hard on winning another cup, but yes.
In the offseason, these guys come
absolutely.
in. Okay, and Backy says to you, Muehr,
he says, Mike, I see your bag over here, but stuffed full of umbrellas over in the corner. I'm like, yeah, that's where it belongs, I suppose.
Hey, Mike, you played a lot.
It could have been a trash bin, right, buddy? Umbrellas is something at least.
This is going to be discussed in our managers' meeting here this week. We'll figure a good spot for it now.
Mike, you play golf with a lot of guys. Verlander, Justin Williams, Backstrom, these guys. What is it that they all have in common that makes them great in what they do?
At golf or in their chosen sport?
Well, I actually just like playing them because those guys are good guys. Baseball players, particularly hockey players, but baseball players too, tend to love golf. And they love to be out there and they love to compete. And they're just great guys. But in terms of why they're so good at golf, particularly the hockey players, I call it the hitting spot from about 20 inches before the ball and 20 inches after the ball. They are so strong and so fast.
Yeah.
And, their swings aren't necessarily all great, but, man, are they fast through that hitting zone. Baseball players, too.
Yeah.
They can just kill it.
All right, so last week to start the playoffs at Liberty National, by the way, Tony Finau wins. Probably the most likable guy on tour, right? Tony Finau.
That's what they all say.
And a tremendous player who just has come really close a lot, which, hey, it's hard out there to win. Great to see him win. I think there's great things still in his future at 31 years old.
His second win, right?
Second win, yes. Yep. Okay. But at a big event. The first one was the Puerto Rico Open, I believe.
Gotcha.
So this is a big win to start the playoffs. Rory Mcilroy, at one point at Liberty National, was so frustrated with his 3-wood, he just threw it over the fence into the woods. And then joked on Monday when he came to Caves Valley, oh, by the way, there's a 3-wood somewhere in the woods near the Jersey Turnpike, which was technically not correct. And if anyone wants it, they could probably go find it in there. Well, lo and behold, people that figured out Google Maps started to go to an access road near the 9th tee at Liberty National, and now they've got security up there because they don't want people jumping the fence looking for Rory's 3-wood. Now, I must say this as the biggest Rory stan there is, and I love that Irish lad. We can't be normalizing club throwing. This is bad. He needs to be tut-tutted a bit, Because the kids, Ron, your son, Winston, emulates the big boys. Rory has thrown a 3-iron into the lake at Doral. Trump fished it out and gave it to him the next day. He's now thrown a 3-wood. Why does he get away with it just because he says it with a smile and an Irish laugh?
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything because I snapped my putter over my knee at
Oh,
Pinehurst.
my Ronnie.
On the 16th hole, number 4. Luckily, I had a backup putter in my bag, my long putter. I was in between my long
Come
putter.
see me. I have half of Buddy's stock in my office back home.
Yeah. There's a guy that carries 2 putters in his bag. There's serious issues going on during a round. Not like in the trunk. He's got it in the bag.
Serious question. Do you let Winston see you get angry?
No.
You don't?
No.
When he listens to this podcast, he's going to say, Papa, because he still calls you Papa.
He does.
You get mad, Papa? Jack Nicklaus, buddy, once said sternly, his dad said, if you throw another club, you're never playing again. And Nicklaus says that's the last time he ever did it.
I've got a good one. So we're playing out at Lowe's Island with this really good accomplished player from the club, Bill Musto, who's won the club championship 7 or 8 times. And, anybody who's thrown a golf club knows that there's a release point, and you got to be right on.
Oh, sure.
It was a par 3, water left, goes to throw it, little tomahawk, sidearm, holds on a split second too long, 5-iron, straight left into the lake. And I said, wow. I said, Billy, I see 2 options here. You can just roll along, and I'm going to tell Charlie, your son, who's at the time was about 12 and a very good golfer. Now he just finished at the Naval Academy on the golf team. Yeah. Or you can go in there and fetch it out.
Oh,
you choose.
Your choice.
And so he pulled down his kit, rolled out in the lake up to about waist high. We let him roll walk around for about 10 minutes. He didn't have any luck. We said, all right, Billy, let's go.
Oh,
but it taught him a lesson. I don't think he's ever thrown a club since.
Wow. Well, if you do throw a club or break it, buddy, you've got a full repair service here.
We do, and we see plenty of them.
Yeah, Buddy is a big promoter of throwing and breaking clubs.
Without a doubt.
Now, mind you, lest you think I'm a prude, the average Johnny weekend, throw your clubs, I don't care. But if you're a parent of a child who plays, you have to put yourself at a higher level. And tour pros, I think, need to be at a higher level.
Hey, this guy to my far left, this Mr. Former tour player, he says washed up. I say there's no washed up.
Such thing.
This man ran he had a temper. It ran hot.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll just full transparency. I like to say that. But at the U.S. Open, Mike had a little mishap at Shinnecock with his putter.
Buddy, you said your host at Pine Valley was Howdy Giles.
Yep.
So he'll tell anybody that's willing to listen to this story. So he was my walking score at the Shinnecock U.S. Open 1995. Number 7, that diabolical little par 3 where everybody puts it off the green or into the bunker. Well, I'd played pretty well the first day. I think I shot 74 and was in good position to make the cut second day and even par going in that hole. And I bent my putter walking from 7, a 3-putted, walking from 7 to 8. Bent my putter, didn't realize it at the time.
How'd you bend it?
Hitting it on the wood chips, just banging it, banging
Wasn't
it on.
it a bullseye?
It was an Odyssey that looked like a bullseye. That kind of goldish alloy metal,
Well,
really
no wonder
soft.
why you were
really soft, apparently. Soft
primitive
metal.
equipment.
As you learn.
So I get to the 8th green and I look at my putter. It's got the lie angle of like a 7-iron. I thought, oh no! I called Howdy over. I said, Howdy, my putter's bent. He said, how'd you do it? I think I did it there walking from the last green. He said, are you sure? I said, howdy.
Sure.
Remember how Seo Aoki putted like way out in front?
Yeah.
I said, no, it's bent. He says, well, you can't use it. I said, I know. So I started putting with a wedge. I putted the last 11 holes with a wedge, and it was the most embarrassing thing. And 50,000 people on 9 and 18, wondering what's this jerk doing. He obviously broke his putter. But Howdy loves the story because I came clean and told him I bent the putter, and he embellishes it like this huge moral victory of honesty, and which I could have fudged it probably, but it would have been a stretch, and that's not my style.
Mike,
it was an easy decision.
Mike, thanks for being on the show, man.
Yeah, it was great.
It means a lot to us.
It's a lot of fun.
You guys are great.
PGA Tour comes through town next week. It's on to East Lake to wrap up the Tour Championship. And then we get ready for the Ryder Cup, where I just saw the build-out of the Big Iron, the stadium tee box on 1. So good. And
I wouldn't be able to tee it up.
Oh, it's hard to believe. Exactly. All right, in the meantime, get ready to play during the best time of the year. The fall is coming. And thank you so much for listening to the Capital Golf Gang. Get out there, play some golf, and we'll see you next time. Play well, play fast. Play worse, play what, Ron?
I don't know.
Even faster. Come on, you know that. That's a Sheehan classic. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
This has been the Capital Golf Gang on the Team 980. If you'd like the gang to visit your home course, send your inquiries to zabe@yahoo.com. That's CZABE@yahoo.com. Or visit the show page at www.theteam980.com. And for free swag, we're all in extra large. So yeah, thanks for the shirts.